Hi, thanks for joining us um, for your remote working with Microsoft 365 and now what? My name is Allison McGuire. I am with Engage for Change Consulting, and we have joined with 365 Tribe to talk about what happens next after you've invested in Microsoft 365. I have been in the collaboration and uh, digital transformation space for about 20 plus years. I've worked on both the consulting side as well as working for software companies and in corporate roles in both the UK and the US. And I have a total passion for all things collaboration and really enjoy helping organizations embrace the need for new ways of working that are enabled by technology. And I'll let Jeff introduce himself.
Yeah, hi everybody. My name's Jeff Williams. As you can see from the slide, I'm a digital champion expert, which basically means that now I focus on delivering champions programs digitally, which really helps people adopt Office 365. So this is going to be one of the key things we'll be talking about today. My history is technology in general, but over recent years in particular, arranging digital transformation programs for several sort of large organizations and so on. So thanks, Alison. Over to you.
Thanks, Jeff. So, as I mentioned, we've kind of joined forces um, to look at the need for expanding beyond the expertise of 365 Tribe is really around adoption and getting really good return on investment from your investment in what was previously called Office 365, and now you'll hear me kind of use these terms interchangeably. Now we're calling Microsoft 365. And what we've seen is that with the advent of COVID-19, we've really entered a new phase of really rapid change. And this has created a critical need for many organizations to move quite rapidly to remote working. Maybe some organizations that really didn't have a robust way to work remotely, and especially entirely remotely. And Microsoft 365 really provides this powerful tool set that lets you get there, and you've made the investment, and many of you have gotten your staff working seamlessly online, which is really a huge accomplishment. But the big question is, now what do I do, right? For many, this has been a significant investment. It's happened very rapidly and with a narrow focus in response to a critical need. So with such a powerful tool set like Microsoft 365, how can we ensure that we get a real return on investment? So there was research actually that came out in 2019, just last year, from KPMG that said that 80% of revenue growth is going to hinge on digital operations and offerings by 2022. So this was pre-COVID. So you can imagine if already we were saying that 80% of revenue growth is going to hinge on digital, that likely is only going to increase. So how do you make sure that the innovation doesn't end with remote working? And how do you future-proof your business by making sure that you maximize your investment now? And for many organizations, you've already made this investment. You've already started with enabling critical activities, like maybe looking at bandwidth, obviously remote access, and hopefully collaborative ways of working with remote teams. So those are kind of the near-term focus, especially in this almost like crisis mode, emergency response to this rapid change that we've gone through with COVID. So in the long term, though, you want to ensure that not only are you enabling your business processes, but that you're also optimizing them. So now that we're all remote working, how do we help those remote teams work effectively together? How do we continue to support innovation and really build that business resiliency for the long term? So I mentioned digital transformation. It's definitely a buzzword. But Microsoft 365 really does provide transformative power. It allows colleagues to work collaboratively, potentially in ways that they never have before. It connects staff, no matter where they are, with key information that they need. And that information might be explicit and codified and kind of captured in the form of data, documents, and even conversations online. Or it could also be tacit, meaning that it resides in the heads of your colleagues and the heads of your experts. And if you have a question or you need help, you may need to also connect with a person versus just with information, right? Because maybe the person has the information that you need that could help you. So why is strategy important, right? And often strategic planning for technology initiatives gets overlooked, right? Because we have an overarching strategic business plan, and you know, I'm sure everybody on this call has business goals that are defined, right? And aren't we, you know, the view is, aren't we just turning up a tool, you know, implementing a tool that's going to help us work together? But the reality is that to get really good business value out of these tools, you need to understand how you're currently working, right? Because you're potentially introducing a rather large change in how you're asking people to work. And then also looking at the platform as an enabler of your business goals. So going back to your business plan, going back to your strategic plan and saying, all right, what are our important business goals, and how is Microsoft 365 gonna serve to enable those business goals? So it's really important to focus on both of these areas, not, you know, just assuming that the tool is going to kind of underpin those business goals without actually putting some intention behind it. So you want to ensure that your investment in Microsoft 365 is both strategically aligned with business goals, but also that you put some you kind of map why it's useful in enabling those business goals, because that's what it helps colleagues really understand why it's an important tool. Why am I going to use this in my daily work? And you want to ensure also that you have not just use of the platform, but you want that use to mature over time, right? You want to have continued ongoing participation and use of the tools. You want to make sure that the use of the tools maps to your business goals, and also, you know, you're looking to kind of build that over time. So what happens if I do nothing? With any technology change initiative, you know, I think we all know from experience, it is not build it and they will come. If you don't do strategic planning and provide guidance, really you're going to limit your return on investment. So strategic planning helps colleagues understand the why. Why should I use the tools? Why should I work in this new way? Why should I care? How is it going to help me get my work done? Without strategic planning, you know, you'll see kind of a limited return on investment, because people are going to use those familiar Office tools they've been using for potentially decades, but they're going to do so in a limited manner, in a way that they've already been using the tools, right, that they're comfortable with. So they may engage only lightly, especially with some of the new collaborative tools like Microsoft Teams, which are incredibly robust and really offer a lot of opportunity to make remote working a lot easier, a lot more seamless. But I'm not necessarily going to know without some guidance and some help how that tool can help me. And we've seen this, you know, time and again, that it's not just a matter of rolling out the technology. The other aspect of this is, if you don't have clearly defined governance, then work is potentially inefficient. Maybe I am not going to trust the information because there's not a single source of truth, especially if you currently have some pain points within your organization of maybe, you know, colleagues are complaining about, I can't find things, or how do I know that this is the right version of this document? And so The governance piece is really important, because otherwise you may have duplicated efforts, and information, and these new ways of working you're trying to introduce may not be trusted. And in order to get people to engage and participate, that trust aspect is really important. So you want to make sure that you have governance in place as well. So if you want colleagues to understand the why, then you first need to define it and understand it as an organization. So your why, right, is really built around your business goals that hopefully you already have defined. So thinking about some of these questions like, what is the overarching vision or purpose for how Microsoft 365 is going to be used? What are those existing business goals that it will support? Why are these goals important? And what does success look like? How am I going to know that I've, achieved success, and how am I going to measure success? So I like to give an example goal so you can start to think about what this, kind of defining purpose and goals piece looks like. Maybe a common one might be improve the consistency and quality of work. And it's pretty high level, right? If you're talking about organization level, improving consistency and quality of work, I need to break that down into, more measurable objectives. So it's good to have that kind of overarching aim and then break it down into more detailed objectives. So maybe colleagues need to have access to the most current forms and templates. Colleagues are able to truth of the information that they need, right? And that's getting back to that trust piece. Colleagues can connect with experts who can answer their questions and inform their decisions. So those might be some example objectives that would underpin that goal around consistency and quality. So it's not enough to say, okay, we're going to invest in this, and we're just going to collaborate better together. And you won't. I mean, we hear that all the time, right? So why am I doing this? Well, we all want to collaborate. And, maybe your current why is, why are we doing this? Well, because we have to, because everybody has to work from home. Okay, so you need to dig a little deeper, because you've already, essentially you've already ticked that box, probably. You've already made the investment, you've got people online. Now, how do you make sure that the platform's really going to support your business goals for the long term? So think about that overarching goal for the platform, tying it to your business goals, and then breaking it down into some more granular objectives that are really measurable. So then we get into the how, right? So we understand our why, we've defined some objectives, we've tied it back to our overarching business goals. Now we get into defining your how. How is Microsoft 365 going to aid me in achieving these goals and objectives? So some of the questions you might want to think about are, how is Microsoft 365 going to be used? I think in the past, if you were implementing these tools, you may have some teams or groups of people that were co-located and some that were remote, and maybe you're trying to connect both. I mean, we're in a whole different kind of state of flux right now, where you may have a lot more people remote than you did before. So it's good to think maybe, how are you needing to use it now, and how is that going to evolve over time as people start to return to the office? I think a lot of organizations are looking at whether or not it makes sense to go back to the old ways of working, and even having people return to the office in some cases. So that might be a really important question to look at, kind of in the near term, maybe medium term and long term. And you can break down your objectives, in that way. Are there any other systems or business processes that need to be in place? So if we're asking people to work in a different way, it's possible that we're going to need to define new business processes to support that. So if you think about the governance example that we talked about, those may be new processes based on how we're going to leverage the Microsoft 365 platform. What needs to happen, right, in order to achieve achieve these goals and objectives. So this might be looking a little bit at your culture, looking at your organizational structure, saying, is there anything that that we have right now that's going to really support these new ways of working? Or are there things that we really need to change in order to evolve our culture, to kind of meet these new ways of working that are enabled by the technology? So how are you going to maintain quality over time? That's kind of goes back to the governance piece as well. You want to make sure that you're reinforcing that trust. Who needs to be responsible? So there's probably new roles and certainly new responsibilities that need to be in place in order to support that. And we're going to talk, actually Jeff's going to talk and give you a little more detail about one particular role, which is the role of the champion. And then how do you know when you're successful? So don't forget to define some measures, some metrics, some benchmarks. They might be quantitative. There's some analytics that are available within both the broader platform and Microsoft Teams. And actually, I say there's some analytics. There's a lot of analytics, and Microsoft is rolling out more robust analytics. It seems like monthly, so it's improved and changed over time quite rapidly, which is great. So you may actually need to put a lot of intentional thought into measurement to make sure that you're not kind of dazzled by the analytics that are available and not using them to actually measure against your goals. So if we think about our example goal to improve the consistency and quality of work, we may want to define how co-authoring will be used and ensure that colleagues are trained on best practices in co-authoring. Because co-authoring looks a little different now, especially with Teams. And I've found, through many years of experience that different people have different levels of comfort with someone touching their stuff, right? Editing their documents. And so co-authoring is super powerful and can really make creating documents together much more rapid. But there's a certain level of trust that needs to happen in between the people that are authoring. So, and some documents may need to have more controls in place in order to make sure that that you have kind of oversight and that governance around those documents, depending on what it is. Have a process in place to prevent duplicate content. So the platform absolutely supports this, but that doesn't mean that people can't still download and save things to their hard drive or put things in more than one place. So you want to make sure that you have some of those processes ironed out and also educating people on best practice. Maybe forms and templates, documents, especially compliance-driven documents, need to have a scheduled review date. So usually on an annual basis at minimum. So you make sure that you have that trust in the information as well. And then another great example is incorporating a feedback loop. So you want to identify any gaps that you have, right? Because we're all learning to work in a new way. And you also want to celebrate success. So we have a really robust program that Jeff will also share with you that rewards some of these behaviors as part of our Champions program. And it's really important that as people start to adopt new ways of working and leverage the tools, in an effective way to support your business objectives, that you're acknowledging, hey, that's great. This is really helping us work together better, right? And then defining how you're going to measure success through both quantitative and qualitative means. So leveraging those analytics, but also thinking about maybe you have existing qualitative surveys, using that, kind of taking that feedback loop and thinking about, you may get feedback on how well the platform's working for people, how well they're leveraging the tools, what kind of questions are they asking. So you want to make sure that you have a way to capture that and use it to make things better over time. Another important factor in encouraging adoption and successful use of Microsoft 365 in pursuit of those business goals that we talked about is the role of executive engagement. So leaders really have a role to play in any change initiative. This is probably, I won't say the hardest piece of the puzzle, if you will, of getting to success, but maybe the most overlooked. I believe that targeting leaders to make sure that they really understand not just how to use the tool, right? Because you want to make sure that everybody understands how to use the tool set, and that they understand the why as well as the how. But leaders actually have a role to play in moving beyond endorsement and sponsorship. So they've endorsed you buying Microsoft 365, right? You've already invested in it, but leaders have a huge impact on the success of adopting Microsoft 365 because they can speak with authority about how it's going to enable key business goals. So to create, the feeling that it's okay, right? So this kind of sense of permissibility, but also that it's important, right? And that it's tied back to what we're trying to achieve as a business. Also, they act as role models, right? So if I see my CIO or CEO participating on Microsoft Teams in a team that I'm a member of, or maybe using Microsoft Teams to communicate across the organization, then I know that this is really the way that we are going to work together, right? So it really embeds the ways of working within your organization. So leaders can also demonstrate how the tools can be leveraged, right? So you can use them as a role model. And if you don't have access to your CEO, don't despair. You can engage leaders really at any level within the organization, and maybe having one kind of C-level sponsor is super useful. So if you can get that, that's great. But if you don't have that, then go for where you think there's passion, right? Look for leaders who get it, who are excited about it. Really, the M365 platform enables leaders to work in this more open and transparent way. And that builds trust, right? And open leadership, the concepts around open leadership are very valued right now, right? It'll differ based on your culture, but I think you'll find at least one leader who gets it and is excited and sees the potential. So tapping into them is great. Also thinking about how really, intentionally upskilling your leaders, intentionally engaging them so that they understand what their role is and why it's important and what kind of impact they can have on the success. And really it's all about, creating that return on investment, right? So you shouldn't struggle to explain to them why it's important. Okay, and then the last kind of pillar or piece of the puzzle is champions, right? So I've been in this space for more than 20 years, and I've been working with champion networks all that time, right? So what has been established is if you have a community or a network of digital champions for the change that you're looking to put in place, this has a huge impact on sustained adoption and kind of driving towards that continual growth and value creation, right? So we know that the Microsoft 365 platform is very robust. It does a lot of things. You're not necessarily going to leverage everything that it can offer right out of the gates. I can almost say that you definitely won't, right? Because it might not be tied back to your business goals, and it might be that your audience, right, of colleagues within your organization is not yet ready to leverage everything. So when we talk about moving this kind of move to remote working and using Microsoft 365 to support that, that's a pretty big change for most organizations. Even if you were already doing it on some level, doing it wholesale across your whole organization is a huge change. And many organizations have had to do that, move 100% to home working. So these digital champions have a really important role to play. And 365 Tribe has come up with this great program, which I think is fantastic, called the Your Champions Digital Champion Program, right? And it's designed to engage those champions from the beginning. So connecting them with learning, right, in the form of some videos and also some supportive mentors to like Jeff to continue to help them and kind of mature them over time. They also offer an ongoing assessment of champion competency and understanding that really creates that confidence for champions to lead within the organization. And then a rewards and recognition program that kind of drives it home. So I am going to hand over to Jeff, and I will stop sharing, and Jeff can pick up the sharing. And Jeff's actually going to talk you through maybe a little bit more around the Champions program and demonstrate and show you how the Champions program works.
Thanks, Alison. That's great. Just bear with me a couple of seconds while we get our screen switched over. Okay. Hopefully you guys can all see me and my slide deck as well. So just building on from what Alison was saying, Champions programs are a really key way that we can use for to enable that continued adoption. So not only from the very start, but keeping up that process as we go through. So I've got a few examples of here, and you could argue that Office 365 adoption is quite easy today, because in some ways the apps have got simpler than they used to be. But the flip side of that is that there's more apps than there ever was. I think last time I counted within the Office 365 home screen, I think I had 37 different icons within my Office 365 homepage. So more apps than we've ever had before. And sometimes there's a lot of crossover between the two different apps. So if I want to make a list, a to-do type list, do I do that in Outlook Tasks? Do I use Microsoft Planner? Do I use Microsoft To Do? Do I even use OneNote and keep my to-do list in OneNote? So lots of sort of different options, and sometimes people need a lot of guidance over which is the best app to use at any specific point in time. Again, the second point Alison actually alluded to during her part as well, in that things change continually in Office 365. So I think even today, so I logged into my Office 365 homepage, and instead of all the icons for the apps appearing across the top of the screen, they're now in a bar down the left-hand side. So I did actually know that was coming, but I had no idea it was going to land today. So that's a really good example. And things change literally on a weekly basis in Office 365. In previous years, we would have been used to a new version of Office every 3 years, so 2010, 2013. 2016, but now we've got a new version every week pretty much. So that pace of change makes it really difficult for everybody to keep up with Office 365 and what the latest offerings are. And generally, I think we're just all really busy these days. So I think that in itself presents its own challenges and makes it really difficult to spend time, even to spend time learning the new tools that we have available between across Microsoft 365. And a bit like Alison, you probably notice I use the Office 365 and Microsoft 365 terms interchangeably now, although Microsoft have pretty much moved all of their branding across to Microsoft 365. But I'm still struggling a little bit with that in my head at times. So the flip side of the things that make Office 365 adoption hard, make Office 365 adoption easy are the things that make it hard. So in some ways, some of the apps have got less complex than they used to be. So there's generally less limits on what you can do in an app. So for example, you didn't used to be able to include an ampersand in a file name in the likes of SharePoint and so on, whereas actually now you can. So some of the existing apps, if you like, have got less complex than they were back in the past in terms of the restrictions that we have as part and parcel of them. And some of the new apps are actually really intuitive to use. So things like Planner, I think people can can pick up Planner, and after a fairly brief sort of training or acclimatization session, then they can actually start using it pretty much straight away. Maybe not to its full functionality, but I think it is so intuitive that most people do pick it up much more quickly than they would have done things like SharePoint or even Word and so on back in the past. And the other really nice thing across Office 365 is there are hundreds of things that people come across that they think that, wow, you know, that's absolutely amazing. It really blew me away that you can actually do this now. So loads of examples of this in Office 365. You could say things like background removal in Word. Previously, you would have needed Photoshop or something like that to be able to do that. And now you can just do it straight in your Word document. In a few seconds, you can remove the background from a photo. So there's lots of examples of things like that, which are super exciting and super amazing, if you like. So one of the ways we can really help with this adoption is to actually have an effective champions network. And there's a big difference between having a champions network and an effective champions network. So I think lots of people have tried the champions network route and things have gone a little bit wrong. And there's a number of reasons why that might have been. So these are just some of the examples that we have. So sometimes you get the wrong champions recruited. So the people that have been recruited are just really techie people. They like to learn about this stuff, but they're not really good champions because they're not willing to share that knowledge. They don't integrate with other people within their business or within their team and pass that knowledge on. So often they don't make the best of champions. Some people would say they don't have time to learn. So I always like to argue against that. You don't have time not to learn, because the learning will save you loads of time at a later date. So if you could just invest that time up front, then you will get that back in spades as time goes on. So people that have that attitude are probably not the right people to be champions. Sometimes they're guided by their previous experiences as well. So some people that perhaps have used SharePoint back in the day when it was a really complex and difficult app to find your way around, they've come to just hate anything technical, in particular anything to do with SharePoint. So again, you can overcome those feelings if you can build an effective champions network, but it might also be that you want to decide that's possibly not the right person for the champions program. People that say they see no benefits, I struggle to believe that there's anybody that doesn't get benefits out of the apps that we now have available in Office 365. So I think that one's actually quite a difficult reason to justify, so therefore it's quite easy to overcome. Champions lose interest over time. So often when you first start a champion program, everybody's really excited. They can't wait to get their hands on all these exciting new tools, learn what they can do for you. And then within a few weeks, that interest kind of peters out. And there's a few things that we can do that actually make we avoid us getting to this position. And it's really about making sure it's a continual learning process. So it's not just deliver a load of learning at the start of the champions program so that they get off to a flying start, but we need to sustain that as we actually go through the whole program. People that haven't even logged in after the first 6 months, so again, that's probably not a great champion to have, but again, there are things you can do to mitigate that. So we keep track of when people have logged in, what activities they've undertaken, and we'll actually chase them up if we find that somebody's not participating. It might be that they fall into one of these categories that were further up the screen, so perhaps they are the wrong person and perhaps we need to just remove them from the champions program, or it could be that they're just not sure what they're doing, so they just need a bit more support to actually get up and running. And then the best champions leave. So that will always be one of the challenges, in that the very best champions are the ones that have learned the most, and typically they will then move on to other roles. Hopefully they'll take that sort of champion knowledge with them and that champion mentality and spread that around their new department. But you know, that's almost a success really, in that if we've really given somebody the tools and they move on to another part of the business, then that's great. So what do champions need more of? So knowledge, obviously, the more knowledge we can give them, the more they can actually make use of the tools that they have available. They need enthusiasm as well. So most of this would come from within themselves, but again, we can help them to generate that enthusiasm with all those wow moments that we talked about as part of Microsoft 365. We also like to give them some recognition for the work that they're doing, for the learning they're undertaking, and in particular for you being a good champion, so actually spreading their knowledge amongst other people within the business. And we've got ways that we can do that, which I'll show you in a little moment. And then we like to build a sense of community, so the champions aren't on their own in their department. We like to bring all of the champions together. We work really closely with them, and we like to build that sort of community spirit that really helps to make a champions program successful. So this is the basics of the program that we actually deliver. So it's all delivered within Microsoft 365. So that's one of the really nice things that we're learning about Microsoft 365 by using Microsoft 365. And it's all actually hosted in Teams. So I'll show you a live example of this at the moment, but the basic principle is that the champions undertake some learning. So that might be by attending webinars, it might be by watching tutorial videos, it might be by an in-person workshop session, if that was possible. Obviously, that's more challenging at the moment, but it's really, there's multiple channels that they can learn through, and we don't mind which one they find most useful. All of the webinars that we do on particular topics are all recorded, so the recordings are always available to the champions that couldn't make that particular session as well. So the more resources they can use to learn, the better from our perspective. So we then ask them to demonstrate that knowledge. So we give them a real world type scenario, and we want to demonstrate some of the knowledge that they've now acquired. So show us how you would share a document in Word, or show us how you would maybe add a guest into a team or something like that. So we use these sort of real world scenarios. We ask them to demonstrate back to them, and we ask them to provide evidence for that. And again, I'll cover that in a moment. And then the final part of the actual process of becoming accredited, if you like, is to undertake a knowledge check, which is a fairly short 10 questions, typically multiple choice questionnaire, where it's just really meant to be a final validation that they do really know their stuff about that particular app. And assuming they pass that, then they get given a digital badge like so, which they can use in numerous places. So they can display it in their email signature. Typically, they can add it onto LinkedIn or whatever. So lots of opportunities for them to use that. So enough talking about champions programs. Let's now actually have a look at one. So I'm going to jump out of the PowerPoint. I'm actually going to dive straight into one of our clients' live champions programs. So this isn't a demo site. This is a live program with one of our customers, and you can see it's all hosted in Teams. And the team is broken down into separate channels for different apps and so on. So we have the philosophy channel, which is around the philosophy that kind of sits behind Microsoft 365, around accessing your files from anywhere on any device, that kind of thing. And then we have more specific content for individual apps, such as Teams, for example. Just in the general channel, before we dive into to look at one of these examples, in the general channel across the top, we have tabs for different parts of our program. So clicking on the Start tab takes you to a sort of information page where it gives you some background about the program. It gives you the schedule that we're going to be working to. Typically, most of these programs are 12-month programs, and because there are so many apps that go to make up Microsoft 365, we normally break it down into 4 quarters, but this can be changed. So if it suits a particular client's needs, we can customize this. We've done programs that were as short as 8 weeks, or we've done programs that were longer than 12 months as well. But this is a typical example where we've broken down the individual apps into the 4 phases, spread out over time for that full 12-month period. So that in itself is part and parcel of sustaining this engagement over time. So they're not bombarded with trying to learn about every single app right from the start. They can kind of build through it as they go. And then this is the process that I mentioned that they go through. So they learn about an app, they undertake the challenge, then the knowledge check, and then they earn their badge. So I mentioned about webinar recordings. So we have a tab in the team which has a list of all the webinar recordings, webinars that we run for this particular organisation previously. And again, at any point, anybody can click in and play these accordingly. So you'll see from this that they tend to be focused on a particular app or a particular topic. And we also have these community webinars, which are actually open to all of our clients. All of the champions join together. So we're not only talking a community within one organisation, we're talking about a wider community across multiple organisations there. So we present these once a month as well on particular topics. But it's also got a league table. So I mentioned the reward of attaining badges, and we also publish these badges in a league table, so we can see individuals that have got badges for different apps as we go through. And in particular, we've got an extra bit around the mentor points and mentor badges, which I'll mention in a moment. So this is not focused on their learning, it's focused on how a champion can help other people in the business. Whenever they help other people, they earn points that go towards this category here. So if I jump into the Teams channel, we'll just have a look at an example of this. So click onto the Learn page. So this has got the learning resources that I mentioned earlier. So we have a list of upcoming events that we would have in here. And then below that, we have a load of short video tutorials that we produce, which are typically between 2 and 5 minutes long, so not sort of lengthy sessions that people need to set time aside to sit and watch. They can watch them on demand whenever it suits them, and it's all broken down into these really nice sort of learning nuggets, if you like. They can watch these, and once they've learned about the app, whether that be from the videos or from the webinars or whatever, then they undertake the challenge. So in this particular case, we asked them to create a channel within a team. We asked them to post some content into that channel, to email some content into that channel as well. So again, just demonstrating using this in the real world. And then we review those challenges manually. Each challenge gets looked at by hand, and if it's approved, they'll get sent a link to the knowledge check for that particular app. But also the challenge also gets posted into the post section within the team as well. So here you can see examples of some of the challenges that other people have submitted in here. I'll just click on one of them for sake of argument. So we can see here that Dawn's created a channel. She's sent a message in by email. So again, just demonstrating that she's actually using the app for real, if you like. So that serves two purposes by posting in there. Firstly, it provides inspiration for the other champions. They'll pick up some ideas as to what people have used during their challenge, and also that the champion that's undertaking the challenge can draw some inspiration from what other people have done as well. It kind of works both ways. We have an Ask the Experts channel. So this is where anybody can ask any sort of technical question around the particular apps that they may have. So this is one of the key sort of support mechanisms, if you like, for the champions. 365 Tribe experts would be in there to answer any questions that they may have, but actually you'll also find over time the champions themselves will answer other champions' questions as well. So again, it starts to build that sense of community in here. If I just pop back to the general channel before I move on to the mentor one. So again, when somebody earns a badge, it gets posted into the team so people can see that that person has earned the badge. And again, we encourage people to react to that. So either by liking it or adding the heart to a message to congratulate people and so on. And Matthew here is a good example. So he's one of our champions within that this particular organisation, and he's really proactive about supporting other champions and encouraging them to complete their badges. So you can see that he's posted a praise message for Paul here, which is great. So it's that, again, building that sense of community, and it makes it really inspiring for people. So the final bit, I mentioned this earlier, the mentor bit. So this is where a champion really shows their mettle, if you like. So as well as learning themselves, the whole point of a champion is that they then spread that knowledge. And we do that using this mentoring program where they can earn points that count on that league table that I showed you just now. And the way they do that, again, we've got this all set up digitally. So they'll get a bronze badge. They get 5 points every time they help somebody, basically. And once they get to 50 points, they get awarded the bronze badge. At 100 points, they get awarded the silver badge, and at gold they get the at 150 points they get the gold badge. And the way that they actually do that, they either share a link to a Microsoft form. So again, we're using Microsoft 365 to actually learn about Microsoft 365, link to a form or a QR code that they can pass on to the person they helped. That person then completes that form, and that then comes through to us and allocates them those points onto their league table, so that we can show that they've earned those points for helping other people. So overall, this Champions program as a whole, I think it really helps to keep people engaged. It helps to keep people learning. And I think if we just flick back to some of the messages that we see in here, some of these are just fantastic. I love to see all these kind of messages in here, and that's really what makes it a really successful program. It's that integration. You'll also see that we also post tips on a regular basis. So as well as holding the webinars, we do make the whole team interactive as well. So we'll regularly post tips such as this, for example, about how you can make an announcement rather than an individual post. So lots of really positive things around a Champions program, and I hope you enjoyed actually seeing that sort of real program rather than a demo system. I think generally that works quite well. So a bit of feedback from, if I just switch back into PowerPoint, so some of the feedback from what our champions say. So people that have tried to learn Office 365 so many times through e-learning and so on, a Champions program has succeeded where everything else has failed. So that kind of thing just really warms my heart. I think that really is what we're all about. So it's great to read those kind of things. What some of our clients say, if I just move on to that slide. So these are just some of the organizations we work with, and you know, in multinational companies, 120 champions in 16 different countries, and skills wise, champions achieved over 90 badges. This particular program is only running for 8 weeks, so 90 badges in 8 weeks is absolutely amazing. So hopefully that's given you a real taster as to what the Digital Champions program can do, and how it can really keep people engaged. So I think at this point, if I just switch to this slide here, switch through. Ooh. Try that again. There we go. So now we'd like to cover off any questions that have come up during the course of the session. So if you do have any questions, please do post them in the Q&A panel that you can see on your screen. I know there was one earlier about the recording, which I've already answered. So we will post the recording out to you, the link for the recording afterwards, so that you can access that at any point. I will warn you, this is being run as a Teams live event, so there is a delay of around 20 or 30 seconds typically in a Teams live event. So when you type your question, you'll actually be typing it kind of 20 or 30 seconds after what we're saying right now. So type away if you can, and we'll keep an eye on the questions window. And in the meantime, I think I'll hand back to Alison to wrap up.
Thanks, Jeff. So we've kind of created this this grid of these are all workshops and kind of like packaged up programs that can help you make sure that you get that business value and that return on investment from this investment that you've made in Microsoft 365. So these are not really in order, maybe kind of loosely in order, but I do think each one of these, you know, each corner of this grid is really important. So you want to plan for success. So we talked about the importance of creating a strategic plan. We have a program to help you with that, help you define roles and responsibilities and establish governance guidelines. And if you've made kind of a rapid investment in Microsoft 365, the governance piece may be something you know, that is concerning, right? And everybody's in reactive mode. You may not have had a chance to establish that. Lead success. So we talked about the importance of leadership engagement. Leaders really shape success by framing values and goals, setting performance benchmarks, and then creating that sense that it's okay for us to work in this new way by leading by examples. And we have a program around how to engage your leaders, how to kind of get them ready and understand their role, and get them on board with this role of leading by example. Guiding success. So there's a concept of, we talked at length about the champion role, which is a really important role to kind of, they're like your boots on the ground across your organization that help embed the change. But you also have a role around team ownership. So it's really important to have clear ownership for each of your teams. And this is probably ties back into governance guidelines, right? So if you have clear ownership for each one of your teams within Microsoft Teams, then you're not going to have teams that are abandoned, teams that maybe are duplicates. So depending on the governance you put in place around creating new teams, you don't want to have multiple teams spin up around the same purpose. You want to make sure that there is a clear business purpose for the team, right? That it wasn't that someone just decided that it was a good idea to spin up a team around something, maybe without looking at the big picture. So that kind of ties back into some of the governance piece as well. I always say you have either front-end governance, back-end governance, or probably ideally a combination of both. So maybe you have some governance in how you would create a team, who gets to create a team, and what information you need in order to do that. And then you have some back-end governance to make sure that you're looking at archival of teams that maybe are no longer important. Maybe they're around a project that has ended, that kind of stuff. So the guiding success piece will talk about how those governance guidelines apply to individual teams, the role of the team owner, and helping them actually with best practice and principles around moderation within their team. So that's guiding success. And then Jeff did a great job of showcasing the Your Champions program, which is this champion success pillar. You grow and develop a network of engaged and enthusiastic champions, and that really helps embed that change across your organization. So we have put together this kind of package of workshops and programs to help you through every aspect and every kind of stage of your project with Microsoft 365. And in particular, I would say if you've made a recent investment in, specifically around COVID, and you're looking for what do I do next, the plan for success is probably a great next step. So you can check out these workshops and programs on the 365 Tribe website. There's a couple of links down here at the bottom. And certainly you will be receiving a link to the recording and those links in the follow-up as well. So it looks like we haven't had any further questions come in. So I think we can wrap up, Jeff, unless there's anything else you wanted to add.
No new questions come in. I'd just like to thank everybody for attending. Thanks, Alison. I thought that was a really great session. And yes.
Likewise. I hope everybody's excited about what's next. Great. All right. Thank you for your time, everyone. And we'll look forward to hearing from you.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.
Bye.